Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back here to the Launch Pad and episode 007 of the Launch Pod, our weekly or bi-weekly or once a month podcast where we cover everything that happens in space, depending how crazy it is. And we are so glad that you are here with us tonight. As always, I got Ian. How's it going, Ian?
It's going pretty good. It's been a wild 2 weeks. A lot has been going on.
A lot's going on. Let us know in the chat if you can hear both Ian and I 5x5. We'll see if we start off the show not frozen, not muted, and not small. So we're on our way. But a lot to talk about over the last couple weeks. So on your screen, something a little different we're trying out this week is a little bit of an idea of everything that we're going to go over this week. So you guys can follow along. If you're watching the replay, comment below replay so we know you came here later. And if you want to be able to jump to a certain story, you'll be able to do so there. If you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, thanks so much for doing so. And we have the video broken up into segments over on YouTube. So if you're looking for a specific story to share with some friends or family, it's an easy way of doing so. But Ian, lots on the docket. What do we have tonight?
Okay, yeah. So we'll start off a little strong armed with some dueling action. How about that? It's kind of like we're back in the 1800s. So we've talked before about Ukraine and Russia. Of course, we don't want to get too much into politics on this show, but it definitely has affected a lot of our community personally, but then also the space community. Moreover, and it seems now that it's dipping into this weird realm. Of course, everything Elon touches gets a little interesting. He has now officially challenged Putin to hand-on-hand combat over Twitter. And not much has come out of it, obviously, otherwise it probably would have been bigger news. But Putin has not responded, to my surprise. And Elon's tried to spur him a few more times here and there. Teasing him with follow-up tweets and then saying like, "Oh, I'll give you 10% more for any pay-per-views." But the what's that guy's name? Rotsgen? I can never remember. Zach, help me out. Yeah, he definitely engaged with Elon. I didn't put it in there because I'm just remembering it now with our sheet. But essentially saying like, "Oh, you could never, you puny man." Get sent to, I think he said Kazakhstan, and he like recommended a fighting training camp and said like, oh, go here for a few months and then come back and then you'll be able to fight the mighty Putin. And yeah, honestly, not much more to say other than that, but thought it was a nice little silly thing that we can start off the day with. What does the community think? Honestly, Zach, do you think he could take on Putin? Because at one point, well, I do want to say this. Putin's smaller. He's a little beefier. I think he does go through some training. But Elon did take on a sumo wrestler at one point. Didn't win, but he didn't really lose either. I think it sort of ended up as a stalemate. But he referenced it in one of his tweets too, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I could take on the sumo wrestler. I'll defeat Putin." But yeah, who do you think would actually win in a fight like that?
I don't know. I'm putting it to the community. There's a poll in the chat for you guys. We want to know. I mean, I my money's on Elon because just everything he sets his mind to, he does, it seems. But or I'm not too sure. I mean, as you said, Putin goes through quite a bit of training, but I mean it nicely. I'm a bigger guy. Putin looks a little rounder than he used to. So who knows? We'll see what the community's there right now. Ooh, it's getting closer to a tie, so we'll check in on that in a few minutes. Let us know what you guys think in the chat. As well as things have obviously spilt out with everything going on with Russia and Roscosmos and everything. One of the big ones, if you were following along, is we should have had a Oneweb launch last week, but that did not occur because of the European Union refusing to withdraw their stake in Oneweb, which was the demand of Russia, and Oneweb and the European Parliament said no way. So it became a big question, who would launch Oneweb satellites? That's the satellite on the right side of your screen. On the left is Starlink. And I think for the first time ever, at least in the space sector, a competitor is going to be launched on a competitor's rocket. So Oneweb has signed a deal with SpaceX to resume launching Onewebs as early as the end of this year, which makes me think that the way they're stacked and their deployment's going to be really easily modified from a Soyuz over to a Falcon 9. But we're going to see OneWebs launching from, I'm assuming, mostly Kennedy area on the Space Coast. I'm not sure if we'll see any from Vandenberg because OneWeb already actually has a office site at Kennedy Space Center right next to the Visitor Center. So that's probably going to expand, see some more activity. We don't know how long this contract's for, but it sounds like OneWeb's moving over to Falcon 9 kind of permanently, which was an interesting development. When you heard about it, Ian, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's kind of a strategic failure on Russia's part. Here's where I think they were at. They probably thought, and this is maybe evident through what they tried to do, that, oh, if we and you can listen back to the last biweekly episode if you want to get more of our take in that moment because we talked about it. But Russia said you need to get the UK government out of being a primary stakeholder in your company, and if you do that, then we'll continue to launch. Probably trying to convey strength, obviously, and probably thinking that they actually had that power to do it because SpaceX wouldn't launch them. Where else would they go? Like, there's a ton of Soyuz laying around. They already have the schedule. They've already got their satellites there. It's more of just trying to bully them into doing what they want. I don't necessarily think, in all honesty, they probably predicted that they would not only say no to that, but then they would pull out so quickly and already have a provider scheduled. And like you said, hopefully before the end of this year. So it's not like they're too far behind of what they probably intended to do. Now, there's no word on if they're going to be getting their satellites back from Russia. They already had quite a few that were there in preparation for future launches. But if I were Russia right now, not only with, oh, thank you, Richie. Yeah, just sell your $10. We've been officially derailed for the first time. Derailed. Yeah. Okay, here we go. I'm back on track now. You did derail me. If I'm Russia, not only did I lose OneWeb, which contractually had quite a few launches going forward, so that's a pretty big client right there. But then on the world stage, if you've got really your major two launch providers that are open to other people, China's a pretty big launch provider, but they don't just launch a ton of companies. Russia and the US. Russia has kind of taken themselves out of that arena. Companies like SpaceX are going to get a lot more clients and probably have to build more rockets than they had intended to otherwise. And that's going to make them much stronger and Russia much weaker in a point where, like I had said before, I really think that they had anticipated they were going to show strength and kind of bully their way into getting what they want and then keeping all of those launches. So that's my thoughts. I'd love to see going forward how this really affects their agency, especially at a time, too, where they're struggling for US dollars because of all the sanctions going on. OneWeb and a lot of other companies, I assume, would probably be paying in US dollars and in very large sums of it. So to not have those tens of millions of dollars flowing into the country, specifically right now, I think is going to hurt them a lot, too. So, yeah.
I think with Russia on there, I saw Tech Tinkering's comment here, the yellow launch suits. I don't think we talked about that since that happened. The Russia Roscosmos crew arriving on station in some yellow and blue spacesuits. We've heard from them that those were planned 6 months ago, that they had extra yellow fabric, a few other things. But your thoughts? Do you think it was related or just coincidence and timing?
Honestly, I don't know what I think, which is why I didn't really put it on the docket because I can totally see both sides. It's like who knows? Like you said, it's done. I think I had read like 2 months before, so it's not even a short period of time of like before. This was a long time before, and they've done this before, but they've only done it for one or two people, not for a whole crew like that. So I think it's anybody's guess. I would love to, in my heart, think that they did it as a sign of support. Now, granted, they're representing Russia. That's scary if I were them to be able to do something like that. I'm assuming if that were the intention, that they would be doing it hoping that because they're so public and because they're off of Earth, probably nothing will happen. And it'll blow over by the time they get back down. Now, who's to say if that's going to happen or not, if that was the intention, because the people behind that would know either way kind of what caused it. But yeah, it was very nice to see. I think it was a fantastic moment. I just really hope that there's no consequences that come from it, intentional or unintentional.
Completely agree.
Yeah. But speaking of some shakeups and some launches, we had talked on our last, again, that bi-weekly episode that Pete Davidson was going to launch on New Shepard. Well, turns out he's not going to launch, which really sucks because I was honestly very excited for that, especially.
Chad was going to space.
Oh my God, Anthony! Whoa, Anthony! Come on, they can't say anything. Their family's in danger. It's like, look at what it is. Take it for that too. Otherwise, they're doing it for nothing. Yeah, it's a fine line. And I would love to say like, oh, Russia would never do anything to its own people, but they have before. Some pretty cruel things. So we'll see what comes out of it. But thank you so much for that support. That is amazingly generous, and we have now been derailed for the second time so quickly in this podcast. Keep it coming. Keep it coming.
If you guys want to derail us, you know how to do it.
Yeah. So Chad will not be launching anymore. That was his name, right? In one of those sketches. I was really hopeful that he would put on the Chad persona and do something during the launch. They're only waitlist for 2.5 minutes, 4 minutes. It's not too long, and there's not too much space. So I don't know if anything would have ever come out of that, or if he was just there more as like a public figurehead to get people interested. But he's not there anymore, and in his place is oh shoot, I forget his name already. Gary Lee.
Gary Lee.
I'm so sorry, Gary. We're butchering your name, but pretty cool guy. He was one of the people that helped create the New Shepard. So for him to be able to go on something he helped create, fly himself, actually is pretty spectacular. He seems to be thrilled by the opportunity. I don't know. I'm assuming then he's definitely not a paying customer. It seems like Blue Origin's trying to treat some of the people that had helped through its progress and some major celebrities to get the drum running and then start to go more towards their commercial clients. But we have now on the screen the full roster, 6 people. It's going to be tight. Yeah. I don't honestly know. I mean, I would never pass up the chance to go weightless and to go into space. But in such a small area, 6 people, it doesn't seem like a lot of fun. Like you wouldn't be able to move around much, not be able to see much. Even when they did 4 people, it seemed like a little bit too much. But what do you think, Zach?
4 I would have been good with. 6, yeah, it's a little crowded for the cost. I almost feel like they should do options. So, another 50,000 or another 100,000, then you can be on one with only 4 people. I guess if you just bought all 6 seats, maybe you could go alone. Do we know anyone rich enough to do that yet?
Jared Isaacman.
One thing I wanted to give out a shout out to was one of the people on board is someone we indirectly know. And that is Jim Kitchen, who was one of the Inspiration 4 competitors. And I know a lot of the other Inspiration 4 competitors, like Ian, were kind of in a group and talking and are just so excited to see that, Inspiration 4 wasn't the end of it. There are still people doing, astronaut training. There are people now like Jim getting to go up and experience, 0G for a few minutes there. So super excited to see a familiar face on board. It's kind of different to see a familiar face on a mission to at least over the Kármán line there, but not so wide range of ages. I think would be interesting to call out. It is a little bit of an older crew, and that's not a bad thing, but that's kind of neat to see that it isn't the super young money that is doing this. It is a little bit of an older generation just as excited to get to go up into space. So as always, there's a cost, and someone's got the money, and these 6 are going, and I'll be excited to see them launch here as we move closer to that launch date. Of course, we'll be covering that live here on the launch pad. And speaking of money, as all things I'm sure if you've noticed, has started to increase in prices, your fuel, your food, your rent. Well, SpaceX decided to jump on board, and they have had to increase their cost of the Starlink system. Not only the cost of the Starlink kit, but also the cost of their monthly service. So, not a major increase, going up $11 a month for their service, going into effect in May. But the deposit going up $50 there. And if people are wanting to kind of cancel and postpone, they're doing a special thing where they're offering people that opportunity if they just financially can't do it. But it's really neat seeing Starlink start to talk more in a permanent a mass rollout. It's, beta's over and they're starting to do that massive rollout and get to more. So we're on a wait list. That's why we got this email, and hopefully we'll get our dishes here in the near future. Elon, if you're watching, there's 2 orders. We're ready. But another thing that SpaceX had to update was their Falcon prices. We looked at that a few weeks ago. I think on the launch pod, it might have been on Discord.
No,
and we went through, I went through kind of buying a mission to space on it. A new Falcon 9's price has increased by, on average, $4 to $6 million. I don't have the Falcon Heavy number, and I believe it was 2 to 3 million more if it was a reused Falcon. So that is in response to obviously the cost of fuel and oxidizers and everything that are needed for those missions. That is what they are preparing to get ready for. So new prices for Falcon 9. So it'll be interesting to see if that affects how many new contracts maybe we see signed, if that will push it out of some of the smaller communities' budgets, or how that will progress. But they're still heading for that targeted record year, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and it's not even going to hit just the big people, even for the ride share, and that was what we were specifically looking at. Like if you just wanted one of the small satellites on there, it used to be $1 million was the floor, now it's $1.1 million, which, I mean, 10% you could say that's not too much. That's $100,000. That's a lot of dollars. Even for something as small as like a $11, or I'll round down to make it easier with the math, $10 a month Starlink. If we're looking at like 2 for us, that's $240 extra a year. Now, notably, one of the things that didn't change, and this is probably because they just released it so recently, was the Starlink Business, which actually it's now rebranded officially as Starlink Business. So it's like it's its own kind of entity. But I mean, that's still really expensive to begin with. But yeah, I mean, I get it. Things cost a little bit more now, especially when you're trying to be as cheap and competitive as SpaceX is. Their margins probably weren't the largest to begin with. So they had said, actually, I think it was Elon specifically or somebody else had said they were just trying to stop themselves from bleeding. So essentially, they're absorbing more and more of that deficit, and if they want to stay afloat. And that's one of the things that SpaceX has been fantastic with, at least as far as we know, is being profitable and making really good business decisions, even as they're trying to be very experimental and putting a lot of money towards things like Starbase that don't see a profit right now. They definitely need to be able to maintain themselves in that realm. So sucks to see, especially for us, but I get it. I wonder how it's going to drive competition. So like you and I, Zach, we're focusing on some other possibilities that were out there. I don't want to name names or get into anything out there, but there's some other there's other satellite and types of internet. Of course, they're not as wide as Starlink, but yeah, I don't know. I'd love to see in the long term how this shifts things up. So,
do you think they would lower the price when we get through this period of inflation?
No, I don't think so. Both from a communism. Oh my gosh. Capitalism. That's the word I'm looking for. From a capitalistic standpoint, I don't think so. But then also, I mean, inflation might not be as large going forward. Things might depreciate a little bit in terms of the upfront material cost, but overall, they're still going to go up. That's how inflation works. especially given more instability in Ukraine and Russia, which is a mass supplier of a lot of different materials. Even if the inflation general for the US goes to more normal levels, I think the raw bill of materials is very much in flux right now. So to go back on the price, knowing that you might have to go forward on the price again so soon, I just don't think is a very wise business decision. So they're probably just going to stick with it. Now, how long they're going to stick with it until they do another price hike, who knows? It's inevitable. Everything, even Netflix does like price hikes every now and then. So it sucks, but yeah. Sorry, not communism. Yeah, I definitely meant to say capitalism there.
So we have another box for the TLP bingo we're rolling out next week. Ian says communism.
There we go. I haven't shrunk yet, at least. So, but speaking so much on dollars and news with money, Zac, how often do you? Well, I was about to say how often you use quarters. You're Canadian. You don't use quarters. What do you guys have up there, out of curiosity?
We got quarters. We used to have pennies. We got rid of those. It was just excess weight. Now we've got the nickel, the dime, the quarter, and then the loonie and the toonie. For our friends that don't know what loonie and toonie are, a loonie is a $1 coin, a toonie is a $2 coin. And then we have bills that are plastic.
Canada's another world. I don't get it. Speaking on our regular U.S. American dollars and cents, we've got a new quarter coming out, Sally Ride. Notably, I think this is the first American woman on a quarter, which is pretty cool and definitely something that should have happened a long time ago. It's odd that it's just now happening, but either way, someone in space. So it's pretty incredible, and it's a pretty great tribute too. I'm sure this probably means a lot, definitely to the family, but a lot of other people that knew her and had dealings with her. And it's always cool just in general to see anything, honestly, that's and the general public mass consume that's space related. I don't know if this is tagged to any state specifically, or if it's just like a general quarter. I know some quarters have like something, and then whatever state goes along with it. But I'm definitely gonna see if I can get my hands on some of these quarters, whether it's directly through the mint or just finding them out in the open. But I'd be curious to know. I think they only went into circulation, honestly, this week. So I'm pretty sure nobody in our community has probably seen them. But if you have, definitely drop a line either in the Discord or in the chat and let us know, because that would be pretty cool. And Zac, I can maybe send some your way if you're interested. And
mail me some U.S. money. That sounds about right. There we go. Add it to the collection of quarters. Did that when I was a kid. Used to try to collect all 50 states. See, that's the fun thing. You guys have fun with your money. Ours is just the standard. I love the Queen, but it's just the Queen. You know, there's not much variety in collection. We've got a few unique quarters like this, but you guys have, like, some states have like 30 designs that they've done over the years or something crazy. So it definitely makes it a little more fun to try to collect them. But absolutely like to pick those up if you guys get one in your purse, change purse, wallet, wherever you put your coin. If you use cash now, drop a picture over on the Discord there. We are coming up to the launch of Axiom 1 and then on to Crew 4, which means we are getting a new Crew Dragon capsule. This is the 4th Crew Dragon that has been getting built the last couple of years. It's the last Crew Dragon that has actually been announced to be under construction, and the question has been, what would the name be? We have Endeavor, we have Resilience, and we have Endurance. Resilience and Endurance got their names based off of the last letter of the name before them, but was named by the crew. So the question is, we're going to get another E name for a Crew Dragon, and I know some people in the community, I was like, we don't need another E. I mean, Enterprise maybe, but that's about it. But instead, the crew decided there was nothing better to name it at this time for the world than Freedom. So we now have Crew Dragon Freedom that will be launching on the American Broomstick. And it's going to be great, and I'm excited to see this new capsule. It's pretty much identical to the ones before, but what it'll mean is we now have 4 capsules in service. which means at this point they could be cycling them, I mean, as quickly as they can, but at least every quarter we could see a launch now, if not more frequently, depending how long the mission was, on top of seeing our cargo dragons. So we're going to be seeing a lot more launches out of Pad 39A. Elon's saying their hope was to have 4 commercial crew launches a year as their kind of maximum right now. Axiom Space holding 1 to 2 of those a year, and then possibly seeing another 1 to 2 Inspiration 4 style missions. So we'll have to wait to see what those other missions look like. They want to have that flexibility, and they want to have a Dragon available in case of any emergencies as well. So having these extra Dragons is a great thing to see. The crew getting ready. They've been going through their simulations in Dragon in their suits. We're close enough that they should be in their actual launch suits now, not the demo suits, and getting ready to go up for a 6-month stay on the International Space Station. And we had before on our shop a few different shirts for the names, so those of course have been updated. So if you want to get your Endurance, Resilience, Endeavor, and Freedom shirts, you can get those over on the Etsy shop now. Different colors, big and tall sizes. We even got female cuts now. We had lots of people asking. We've now brought those out, so you guys can go check those out over on the shop.
Yeah, Zach, you know my favorite thing is when you bring up our shop.
Well, the shop's just such a good place.
It is. And we were pretty quick on those designs, so kudos to Zach on that. I think only a few hours after the name was released, we already had them up on there. So if you ever, to anybody that follows our Twitter, if you see some really cool news, you can ping at us, and then maybe we'll see if we can throw out together a design. But then just make sure you check the shop periodically. There's always great new additions coming onto the shop. And we've definitely got some fun things in the work too. So keep your
oh yeah, I got a new piece in the mail today. I don't know if we want to. I think I still have it. Where is it?
Is it what I think it is?
I don't. We'll just maybe we'll just tease like a little bit of it.
All right, go ahead.
Just like a. Is that too much? maybe just like a little more. If you're in the Discord, you might know what this is because you were part of helping design it. But yeah, stay tuned. New things coming to the shop.
Yeah, always some great stuff. Yeah, I'm really glad that we're starting to see more and more crew action. I think even this week they just announced part of Crew 7, so we're looking that far ahead. Honestly, and maybe this is my naivete on the subject, I'm surprised there's not more. 4 capsules is great. I don't know if that limitation is purely because the demand isn't there, because I would feel like it probably is to a certain degree, or if it's launch cadence capacity from the launch pad itself and with what Kennedy can hold, or if it has something to do with actually like monetarily being able to build out production scale of more capsules and boosters. I'm not even sure exactly how long it takes to build one. It seems pretty complex. But yeah, I mean, being able to see another one go up so quickly. I remember Demo 2 didn't even feel like that long ago whenever I was watching them. So, man, I'm here for it. You excited, Zach? You excited, community, for another crew launch? And then actually, even speaking on that, they had, I'm all over the place today. They had announced Netflix a new series about Demo 2. It's coming out April 8th. There's already been a few trailers out, so if anybody's interested, definitely do look it up. It seems pretty fun. Don't know if they're going to follow it as they did Inspiration 4, because it is also Netflix produced, or if they're going to shake things up. But this is going to be actually a really good comparison. That's why I'm interested in it, to see what the private training and launch looks like versus a publicly funded training and launch, because that's not really something we get to see a lot of the behind the scenes of. So yeah, April 8th, I'll be looking. Maybe we can do a I don't know if they're going to do it all at once or episode by episode, but a launch party watch style thing in the Discord. Yeah,
let's do that. We've said we're going to do it, so we're going to do it now. We've done it for some other things, so it does look really, really good. I'm excited to see how closely they were allowed to follow. I think Inspiration 4 gave more access than normal, just because it was so private and so new. So it'll be exciting to see. I'm excited that we're seeing so much space content. You know, we had the Inspiration 4 thing, we had this, we had a couple movies before Inspiration 4. You're seeing shows like the For All Mankind, Star Trek. You know, things are picking up again, and is really exciting there. I see some people talking about what the merch can be, and that the underwear has made a request again. So stay tuned. There may or may be a collection of underwear coming because of many special requests. But there's only one true good day that you can put a collection of underwear for sale on your Etsy shop. So if you can figure that out, that's when we will drop a few things.
Honestly, I don't even know what that day is. So
we'll talk about it after then.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah, you're definitely, you hit the nail on the head there. A lot of people seem to be more interested in space now than ever before, which I think is awesome. I don't know if that has to do specifically with there's more things happening, or if there's more things happening because public interest is going up. Either way, I'm pretty jazzed about it. Of course, the more people that know about these things happening, just the better it is in general. I know we've noted it in a podcast before, but I just wanted to do another one-up on this. The Countdown to the Moon interviews with our good friend Nate from the Inspiration 24 group. Man, the amount of people he talks to that have no idea we're even going back to the moon. Pretty mind-blowing. Of course, we're kind of insulated in this community where we would say, like, oh, who doesn't know what Artemis is, or what's going down in Boca Chica, or this and that. But general public just does not know. So anytime we've got more shows, more movies, more merchandise, action, coverage, anything, I think it's always really, really great. And I hope that translates to the public feeling that way too, so it doesn't fall on deaf ears. But speaking on what is going on in Boca Chica, of course, we were only there, like not even a month ago, and they've already done another stacking. And it's fantastic. Usually we actually have to source a lot of our images from Google, but we were there. We've got our own images, so look out, guys. Those images might be showing themselves in other ways too. But yeah, they've stacked again, and they did a full-on cryo test. And actually, sadly enough, today they finally got rid of the booster on the launch stand, so it is officially disassembled. And from what I think I have heard, that is probably it for SN20 and Booster 4. They are now kind of decommissioned-ish, and Elon had confirmed that they will not be launching, which is something we already knew but had to be rehashed. One thing we did learn, though, is for the orbital launch, it will for sure be Raptor 2. So that's going to be pretty exciting. He said just with the sheer lack of complexity compared to Raptor 1 and the amount of oomph that it gives, that's not scientific, but sounds good. It's a no-brainer, really, that they would use it.
There's another shirt coming soon. Oomph, because it sounds good.
Oomph, yeah, it does sound pretty. I know it's shoot, what's the exact term? I'm not a rocket scientist. I just got my astronomy degree.
How do you spell oomph?
OOMPH, or no, OOMPHF? PF? I don't think it's a real word, so I don't know if it's got a actual spelling, but anyway, yeah, Raptor 2 is pretty cool. We got to see that pretty close up in person when we were at the Starbase event.
Didn't grab that picture.
No, we didn't. Yeah. Well. Anyway, yeah, so who knows even what they're going to be doing with the Raptor 1 engines now that those are kind of out of the way. What do you do with... There were a lot of engines, not just on Booster 4, but on the other boosters that it have done. What do you do with dozens of decommissioned rocket engines?
You make them like garden gnomes down Highway 4 towards Starbase, and you put a light in each one.
That actually...
Wouldn't
incredible.
that be cool?
That would be... Oh, no, they could at least take two. So they're doing the Starship supposedly at the Brownsville airport. They only have that one wing there now, or the flap. I don't know if that's it or if that's the start. But imagine if they took like two of those engines on either side of it and they flip it upside down so the bell's pointing up and they've got the lights coming out of it shining. That'd be pretty cool. I'd go back down just to see that. Um, but yeah, that's the end of that. So gearing up for that orbital launch. Apparently, they are aiming for May. Of course, we still got the FAA approval coming up, I think sometime in the next week or so. Word on the street is it's going to be delayed. So don't get your hopes up. Maybe push back May a little bit. Of course, that's Elon saying it's May. So that's Elon time, which can really mean anything. But yeah, I mean, if it launches before SLS, which I still think is almost possible, that would be pretty interesting to see. Um, so
Yeah, I'm wondering, does it get delayed until June, and we see two super heavy launch vehicles in 1 month make their debut launch?
that's going to be a busy month for us.
Saves me some flights.
Yeah, well, depending
So
on
if
how
anyone's
close they are.
listening, let's put them together, week apart, and we'll be on our way. But SLS making its on land debut this last week. That's why there was no launch pod episode last week, because we were live on location, invited by NASA to attend the rollout. We had Tyler and Marcus on site. For us, Ty was just north of Kennedy, taking a look at Play Linda, and Ian and I were in the studios. For it, doing the live coverage of that and tweeting some incredible photos you're seeing on here from Tyler being down there on site, and these will be coming available soon in some new ways over on our shops and our website, so make sure you stay tuned for those. But absolutely incredible just seeing the power of the transporter come alive again to carry out a rocket we've been talking about really in concept for well over 10, 12 years, through the Constellation program under Ares 5, and then now into what we now know and kind of love as the Space Launch System. Some interesting things that we caught being on site and looking at the photos. The tips of the SRBs are a little yellow compared to the rest of the boosters, so curious if they're older or newer. And the color of the rocket is a little bit more of a rusty orange, but we were talking to some of the NASA people, and they said that's going to kind of dry out while it sits at the sun. So take a look at your photos from day one of rollout and when they bring it back to the VAB ahead of launch, and we might see some change in the coloration there of that center core. But Orion and SLS out at pad 39B. The media were able to go out and get to see it in the morning. When they showed up, they couldn't see about 5 feet in front of them because of the fog, so they had to hang out for a couple hours actually for kind of this dramatic slow fog reveal of SLS out on 39B. The transporter having already left. The crew access arm has now been extended back to Orion, and NASA releasing some incredible photos of crews already up there as well. So 39B getting ready to go through its launch countdown rehearsals ahead of then doing a full wet dress rehearsal probably middle of next month, and then it will roll all the way back to the VAB, hang out in there for about a month and a half, and currently they are targeting the early to mid-June launch window, which opens on June 7th. So, of course, we will be down there live on location for the launch of Artemis 1. Super excited to bring you guys that coverage as we, really, not with people, but we return to the moon. We could put people on this mission and go back to the moon, but we're going to be better safe than sorry, and instead send some mannequins, which was something Bill Nelson announced the names of those two Israeli mannequins that were named, and then the one mannequin that was named by the entire community, and those will fly on board along with Snoopy. So excited to see what they're going to be doing. There's also a bunch of CubeSats on board of Artemis 1 ready to go and get deployed during that mission as well. So lots of things coming up with the Space Launch System. Another rocket we're hoping to see this year, hopefully, I know Ian's really hoping, is Vulcan. This isn't a picture of Vulcan, this is a picture of New Glenn, but what's going on with Vulcan, Ian?
Yeah, so man, those BE4 engines that we've been talking about for years now, they're still coming, supposedly, and supposedly they're supposed to be coming this year. So that means that the Vulcan Centaur will be launching this year. And for those of you that have been watching our podcast previously, you know that rocket has a very special place in my heart because it is carrying the Astrobotic Peregrine 1 payload, which I have a spot on. So I sent my little SD card full of lots of honestly really weird random things I put together, but also some that sounded bad. Also some names from the public and some pictures from the public.
There's the soundbite.
Yeah, yeah. I have been. That was supposed to originally launch last September. No. I'm all over the place. It was supposed to launch last summer and then was pushed back to September and then October and then December and then was like May or June. And now it's looking like it's probably going to be towards the end of the year. So we are pretty late. But this year it'll launch and I'll be there and I'll see my little dinky SD card go up to the moon. And it's a lunar lander. It actually will be on the moon. So I can say a part of me beat SLS, which will be cool. But yeah, bold of me. Those same engines.
Not yet. Not yet. You just cursed Vulcan.
Yeah, now honestly at this point, maybe it will be pushed to like 2026. Come on, Blue Engine, get those engines down. But it's hurting them too, because New Glenn, which is supposed to be using those engines, and is going to be pretty important for Blue Origin because that's what they're going to be launching their actual payloads on, has been delayed to next year. So they're feeling the heat on their end too. And of course, Blue Origin honestly gets a lot of its funding straight from Jeff Bezos, so they're probably fine. But they also they also have investors though that aren't him, and I'm sure they don't love the news that the company will be less profitable for longer. They are going through hordes of cash right now, and of course we announced that they're going to be launching another crew come soon with those 6 people. But we've been seeing on a lot of these crews that not majority, but a good amount of those people are sponsored by Blue Origin. So is it going to be? I'm not against this. I really love the fact that they're giving back to the people, like I said, that had previously helped on the missions. But they're not making a ton of money. They're really not. And they want to have this increased launch cadence, but they've really got to push it to make that happen. So anyway, major point of the story, I want those engines just as bad as I'm sure Tori Bruno does, and it's going to launch this year, Zach. I'm putting my fist down. It's launching this year. It's going to be another Christmas miracle, just like James Webb was, and we're going to live stream it, and it's going to be fantastic. And I rest my case.
So are we going to need a shirt that says Ian was wrong
No.
to come out on December 31st at midnight?
No, you could just, here's what you'll do. You just make a little emote and you can spam the heck out of me for a day and I'll get my just desserts and that's fine.
We'll see what happens. I want to see it fly too because, working on things, and we want to see Vulcan be possible and see what's going to happen there. But another big kind of announcement going to the moon was NASA yesterday, I believe it was, holding a press conference about the Human Landing System contract. This was not one that we expected to be coming, this press conference, but with the president's budget expected next week, kind of started to hear rumblings that there was going to be an announcement, and then 24 hours before we got the press invite to meet with Senator Bill Nelson and the HLS crew and deputy administrator for a major announcement on the change of the Artemis program's trajectory planning, kind of all of that. We all know and love that Lunar Starship, this big, beautiful white rocket, is going to land and bring Americans and Canadians and people from all over the world back to the moon, but this time to stay. But they want a second lander, and I don't know why. I understand that they want to have a redundancy. Redundancy is very important in space in case there ever was a failure with Starship or the booster or something else. You do need secondary landers, but they are opening a second contract for new lunar landers, and SpaceX is forbidden from entering. So this is a contract for another complete lunar lander for another different company, which means our good friends Blue Origin, Dynetics, the national team, and many others are returning to compete for this other contract. Now, it was made very clear right at the beginning of the announcement that SpaceX won in their contract, and it had two options. Option A was that they would have to do two demonstration missions, an uncrewed and a crewed mission. Crewed mission would be Artemis 3. It's currently targeting 2025. And option B is for SpaceX, if they choose to say, okay, we're ready, we want more, that they can then compete for future missions. Now, one of the interesting things that came out with that is option B will have totally different requirements. So next week, we're expecting to get some documentation from NASA on what these other agencies are now going to have to compete for a lunar lander to meet new requirements. They've reduced the amount of risk tolerance, I guess. They want more sustainable options, and they have more budgets. There's about 40 things that they've laid out that have to be very specific for operations and technical data for these new lunar landers. And even though SpaceX is going through all this work to get us ready for Artemis 3, they're going to have to rework Lunar Starship to make sure it meets all of those new requirements before they can bid for their extension / option B of their current contract. Now, I reached out to the media team and asked them, well, what if Starship already meets them? What if Starship's just that good? SpaceX has got a couple years. They can meet those requirements with the current Lunar Starship. And NASA's response was they will still have to do another uncrewed demo mission, which is a big cost to SpaceX, as these are not ones that can come back to Earth. So they'll have to do at least 2 uncrewed demos with Lunar Starship for NASA, and 1 crewed by 2026, we're hearing. So they've got to get Starship going, but we'll have to see what companies all bid. The draft of all of the requirements is expected to come out next month, or at next week. Next month, there will be a conference of interested parties, and then a final list of requirements is expected early summer. So I think we're going to see a September-October deadline for submissions. And then probably next spring, summer, we'll finally hear who actually gets that funding. Now, if you've kind of followed along with these lunar lander contracts, with the first one, 5 other agencies were kind of in the running for the first contract, and they weren't told, no, you're out, you lose. They were actually given more funds. So Blue Origin, Dynetics, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and SpaceX each received additional funding from NASA after SpaceX won the contract for them to be able to start working on new lunar lander concepts or technology so that they were ready for this new contract announcement. And we're just going to have to wait and see if we see that Blue Moon, was it again? And then the super tall one, Dynetics, was just too heavy to land and launch anywhere. But we'll have to see what these companies do, and if anyone new shows up with an idea that NASA likes. But we're going to have 2 lunar landers coming up for the Artemis generation, at least to start. They want to see a uncrewed demo of the second lander in 2025, with operations in 2026 and 27 for their first crewed mission. So it can be pretty quick. Lots of activity heading to the moon. When you heard this, Ian, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think this is stupid. I mean, okay, I'll be nicer. I'll be nicer. I'll tone it down. This is not the best idea. And I think NASA knows it. And I think they're doing it because of congressional pressure, which we didn't see a lot of recently, but when they had announced that it was going to be SpaceX and nobody other than SpaceX, you felt it. It was all over the place. I think it just had a very long reverb effect. And I wouldn't be too amiss if they had chosen this because they were promised a little bit more funding on the back end to kind of compensate for it. Now, I think it's a bad idea, to back myself up, because in other government contracts, it is not uncommon at all to have one supplier, one option. Specifically for the military, like a lot of their equipment comes from one company. they will get bidders. They'll say, no, you're the only person that's building this, and they build it. Why should it be any different for this? It doesn't make any sense other than to say these are legacy companies that are used to being big players in the space field, and are backed by a lot of legislators that are also used to working with these companies that are really big in the space field because it gives kickbacks to their states, which fair to them. But things change over time, and be good with that change. And I don't think they are. So politics is a little messy, and I think that's kind of where we land now. But who knows? I mean, bad idea or not, it's happening. I'd love to see more fleshed out idea of where this goes for these companies. Of course, which one wins, but then I'm sure they're not just going to resubmit their old designs. They're probably revamped a little bit, redesigned, re-engineered, rethought. I'd love to see where that goes. And then if we do have two different types of lunar landers going to the moon, sure, cool. I hope, if anything, that does add a little bit of flexibility. I don't think we'll necessarily need the redundancy, because I think that SpaceX is pretty good at what they do. But if we do need it for any reason and it's there, then I guess things could be worse. So yeah, let's go for it.
Let's spend the billions.
Yeah,
I mean, SLS is only $4 billion, so what's a few more?
Exactly. Yeah, we're not. We could spend a little more. What's a few more $1 billion?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think one of the questions asked to Senator Nelson was, do these proposals, are they allowed to have an option like HLS Lunar Starship that doesn't have to include SLS or Orion? Can could we see Dream Chaser somehow think they can make a lunar Dream Chaser, or a vehicle like that could take the crews? And it was a very hard no. We want a vehicle that meets us in lunar orbit and descends our people down to the moon. And I think that made it very clear to me that SpaceX HLS Lunar Starship may never launch with crew. I don't think NASA's interested in it. I think they've spent, $21 billion on SLS, and it costs $4 billion a mission, plus fuel. That they've spent so much, they don't want to entertain that there's a much cheaper, better option than what they have with SLS and Orion meeting something in orbit. A lot of people had questions on the word sustainable being in the title. Does that mean they want reusable? Or does it mean they want recyclable? Or different things like that. So lots of questions. We hope to have that information next week. If we do, we'll do a quick run through here, but Ian and I might do a kind of full rundown video where we break down all the requirements. I'm going to try to pull up the previous RFP, and it'll be really interesting to see the comparisons between what SpaceX had to compete with the first time and what all these other companies are having to compete with now, because NASA did say they've changed them. They took feedback and they changed them, making it easier and harder in different ways. So I hope we don't see them having reduced it a lot, that they just made it easy and SpaceX is the one that had to do, a brunt of extra work at the beginning. But that gets us to kind of the end of the big topics. There's going to be a couple honorable mentions I'm going to give because I've seen some in the chat that we forgot. But we're going to come into the second part of the show. This is the show that you guys normally love, which is where we take your guys' live comments, questions, topics, theories, anything like that. So if you guys have a question, there's two ways you can send that in. One, just type it in the chat, but make sure you tag us at the launch pad. That's going to make sure that Ian and I are able to see that. If you want to be the next question answered and butt the line, sending that in as a super chat is a great way to help support us, and you butt the line. And we appreciate your guys' support in that way. Morpheor, welcome as a civilian astronaut. Thanks for joining the crew and helping support what we do. But a big one that Ian and I forgot, it just with SLS and everything, James Webb. James Webb had this big, beautiful starry image come out from NASA. If you haven't seen it, head over to our James Webb tracker. We've got it on screen there. There's going to be lots more photos coming out. We've been getting updates from them. The crews are working on focusing all the other instruments now to the focused lens, and they are a couple months away from being able to start actual science and then turning it over to the scientists that are on the timetable. So everything going well, exceeding expectations in some ways, and already sending out beautiful imagery, even though it is just prep images. It's testing images. So excited to see what James Webb really does when they turn it all on, use all the lenses, and bring stuff out. Also talking SLS, we saw down in, I believe it's in the New Orleans area, Artemis 2 is coming together. The core stage of the SLS for the Artemis 2 flight in 2024 now. The 5 main sections that create the core stage have been all brought together, and preparations for continuing to build that are onward. Obviously, they have lots of testing they have to do with the RS-25s, and they have to put them all on, do more testing. So lots of things coming up there, so we'll continue following that to bring you coverage on the countdown to Artemis 2 once we get through Artemis 1. So I think that was the main 2 that we missed.
Yeah, so I want to note on those real quick. One, you had briefly mentioned it, but I love to highlight how amazing this channel is. If you really want to get on the cutting edge of anything that we talk about versus James Webb, we have, of course, our 24/7 live stream tracker, but then also we did live stream their all of their update press conferences, and then additionally, when NASA has their press conferences, notably in this case about the lunar landers, we also live stream that. So definitely make sure you've got that little bell set to ring. And if you're ever curious about what's going on and you see that we go live, definitely join in, because you can get, of course, your little download snippet here, but then you can see kind of what's going on to the full extent, at least as far as we get that full extent. Something you had mentioned, and I'm surprised, Zach. I live so close to New Orleans and didn't pass the tee off to me. Michoud, which is where that Artemis 2 is being built. Michoud, you will hear a fight on how to pronounce that name. Didn't really see this reported anywhere, but I had mentioned it to you and I had posted about it on Twitter. New Orleans actually had a pretty large tornado the other day, and if you look at the path that it went down, it was like right next to the building, which is a little scary. And actually, back in 2017, there was a tornado that kind of had a similar path, and that one also ended like right at Michoud. So hopefully everything goes well. It'd be pretty bad if we're gearing up towards Artemis 2 and a tornado screws us up, of all things.
Just a couple extra billion.
Yeah, no deal. So very interesting. Again, I didn't hear anybody report on that. As far as we're aware, the building's fine. It ended right before, although the map that I had referenced in my tweet actually shows a tiny bit of the track like over the building. I think that was like right at the end, so it could have been just upper atmosphere like dispersal of the tornado. But definitely, if we hear anything additional news coverage out of it, look on our Twitter. We always have awesome live updates on our Twitter at TLPN official. TLPN official.
TLPN Network official.
There we go. Follow us on Twitter. And Zach and I also both have our independent Twitters, and we will post some updates there too. So, and if you want to see any of our really awesome photo coverage live, that's also a great place to go. I had mentioned it for the Starship stack, but then didn't mention it for SLS. All the photos you just saw are from us. I kind of want to give a virtual round of applause here for Mr. Tyler Ferguson, who very graciously represented us all the way down there and took phenomenal photos and videos. We are going to get our hands on that raw footage soon. That includes not only the rollout, but then also we did quite a few interviews of some notable people before. So definitely keep your eye out on the channel for those in the coming weeks and months, depending on how we want to disperse them. But lots of things coming, and lots of awesome photography coming out too. Wasn't Michoud damaged a long bit ago? Oh, if it was, that might have been the 2017 tornado, or it could have been one of the gazillion hurricanes that we get down here. Who knows, honestly. I get why strategically they built it where it did, because it's got awesome port access, but man, that is a bad spot to build such expensive rocket equipment.
Yeah, craziness. I think a great call out from the chat, something we need to notice. We didn't do a Bond intro to 007 episode.
No.
How did we miss this? That's what editing's for. We'll edit something.
Yeah.
Leaf, shake and not stir. That's how you like your SLS boosters. There we go. A couple questions coming in. If you guys have questions, tag us at the Launchpad. I know some are coming through, so we're going to try to catch them. But don't feel bad. Resubmit one. Just tag us at the Launchpad. Helps us out. Morpheor, as a new civilian astronaut of the crew, what do you guys think is the future of electronic propulsion in satellite tech? Which technology is going to prevail? And is the electric propulsion going to be the main way to do things?
Wouldn't that just be general ion thrusters? Is there other forms of electric propulsion that we're seeing in development? I'm actually not super familiar with.
I don't have a big answer on that one either. I know ion, advancements are coming, so maybe we see larger ion type of thrusters and engines that could be there. A big thing is power consumption and batteries. So whatever capabilities we're able to do there. If we're able to make solar panels that charge more and batteries that are smaller, ultimately we're going to see more things go in that electric route. But if it's cheaper and more reliable to add fuel tanks and go with the fuel route, that ultimately is going to what makes that decision. Obviously, a lot of people just go nuclear. Not that easy. But yes, it definitely is a good option. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. It's a great question, Morpheus. Sorry, I don't have a better answer for that one. Leaf, I hope I'm saying it right. Can you make a truly sustainable, non-polluting space rocket with hydrogen and oxygen as fuel? Thoughts, Ian?
You can. The issue is to create those, you're going to need a lot of water, which actually is not the hard part because you can get that on the moon and on Mars. It's really more the electrolysis for separating that takes a lot of power. And if you're doing it on the moon, actually won't be too difficult, I wouldn't think, because you're roughly the same distance away from the sun as the Earth, so you're going to get the same amount of power output for your solar panels. Actually, pretty much the same that you would get from just the ISS or any satellite going around, because the moon doesn't have an atmosphere. So, of course, if you do something like nuclear power on the moon, which is actually something NASA's looking into, so updates on that in a few years. But yeah, I mean, then you'd be banging at that point. But if you're talking something like Mars, where I think they get like 23% of the solar energy that the Earth gets, on top of dust storms, you're just gonna have to like always keep those clean to get that maximum efficiency. It's a lot harder. Conceivably, it's possible, but if you want to like do a whole rocket, something the size of like the Starship, it's gonna take a long time. But yeah, I mean, they're looking into it. I mean, you could do the same nuclear thing on Mars that you can do on the moon. That would definitely solve everything. You can put like a 5 megawatt little reactor there, and that would be more than enough, especially if you're going to be on the surface of whatever body you're talking about for a few months. That gives you enough time. But yeah, totally feasible outside of that, and I'd absolutely love to see that.
Kevin's asking, why did Blue Origin's lunar lander have 2 stages when NASA required it to be reusable? Were they going to send another descent stage for the craft after they returned it to Gateway? Yes, I believe it was actually 3 stages altogether, and that they were going to have to rendezvous at least 1 stage, add that back to the ascent module, and then that would go down. So kind of a reusable Apollo. That was actually a question in the press conference. Are they wanting 3-stage systems or 2-stage systems? And NASA said they're open to any ideas. So that let my heart down a little bit that he didn't say no, because that would have implied they wanted reusable. It'd be very interesting to see a design of a landing pad that goes down with the first one, and then they can have something that goes to it. But I don't think anybody has the technology other than SpaceX to do that right now, that accurately. So we'll have to wait and see on that one, Kevin. We should have that draft of requirements by the end of next week. So we hope to be able to know a little bit more and dive a little deeper into that in next week's episode. So type it into next week and we'll try to answer it better.
Yeah, we'll try. Stephen H. asks, how long till the SRBs are no good? Short answer, as long as NASA says they're good, they're good.
On paper, July-ish? August-ish?
Yeah. From what we've heard on multiple press conferences, they will extend as long as they feel they are safe, which sounds like can be longer. They don't seem to be too worried about it. It
sounds terrible, is what it sounds like. It sounds like a terrible answer.
Yeah, it's basically that they almost essentially said, look, when we get there, we'll reassess and we'll get there. But the fact that they're so nonchalant about it leads me to believe that it's really not too large of a concern. Otherwise, I'm sure they would be at least sounding a little bit more stressed when they answer that. So yeah, who knows if we get an actual like date of when NASA says like we cannot extend this anymore. Trust me, we will be talking about that. But all eyes set for Artemis launching in June. Of course, we've said similar things before, but feeling strong about this one. It's on the pad, so we're
temporarily.
It's temporarily on the pad.
At least there's a little hope now. When they roll it back, it's just going to be sad. It's going to be like, no, you're going the wrong way. Stop. Leave it alone. But they still need to load stuff on it. It's not ready to go, so they still need to be able to access Orion, lift things in, stuff like that. But couple quick fires here. Dragon King, did you see the Ship 24 is Pathfinder for the boosters? We did see some pictures showing what looked to be doors there, so we'll have to wait and see. I'm excited that they somewhat look like almost like a new version of the shuttle bay on Space Shuttle, so that'll be really awesome. John, any Japan updates on the earthquake? Did it affect any of their rocket locations? We haven't heard a lot from them specifically on that. We don't normally hear a lot from JAXA or any of the Japan launch sites other than when they're launching like a 2A rocket, and that's pretty minimal notice. So nothing major that we've heard yet. I know there was a few deaths from it, but I haven't heard a lot. So I think generally if we haven't heard about it after a day or two after it happened, they ended up really lucking out there because it was not a major news story for long.
Yeah,
which is a good thing.
My guess would be JAXA itself is probably fine, but the supply chain will be interrupted. I know for other manufacturing areas, like Toyota had to shut down, I think like a majority of their domestic plants. So their output is a lot less right now, and a lot of other companies had to shut down temporarily. So here's hoping that 6 months to a year from now, when they need those things built out, that the material deficit wouldn't have been too large of an impact. But yeah, like Zach said, we really don't know. So we'll keep our ears open.
Morpheor, do you guys, I hope I'm saying that right, do you guys think we will see a hybrid rocket engine in full size? That is not a model scale rocket anytime soon. Why or why not?
I'm actually not aware of what a hybrid rocket engine is, so please enlighten me, Zach.
Hybrid car? I'm assuming like a mixture of it can use electricity and fuel. I don't believe there really are any that have like that switch over.
I don't think that would be a good idea for a rocket engine, specifically because you are trying to get the most power out of the weight that you're putting in, because every pound that you add means more fuel, means less that you can send up, and more money. Anytime you do hybrid anything, it adds a lot of weight, because you essentially have two different, like at least for cars, like powertrains essentially going into it. It would make a lot more sense to have a chemical first stage, and then maybe even a chemical second stage and electric third stage.
Morpheor says solid fuel liquid oxidizer hybrid.
Okay.
Well, interesting. Yeah, Glimmer. I haven't dived too deep into Glimmer. I know they were looking at something like that. But not many of the major companies, I don't think, have looked into it. I mean, electronic and fuel would be cool too. That's a typical hybrid. But yeah, solid fuel and oxidizer. Um, Maybe. It would still come down to a weight question, I think. And just the functionality. What's better? Does it make sense to just stay liquid or not?
Yeah, I'm trying to go through all these questions now. Somebody said earlier, if I'm wrong, I should eat my hat. What is that akin to electron?
Yeah, you should say it because I already said it too. So you have to be on something to eat a hat as
Wait,
well.
when are you gonna eat your hat? What's that about?
I'm trying to remember what mine actually was. Marcus, you're in the chat. This is his moment. Marcus reminds me quite frequently, and I just forget about it. I want to say it was something to do with 100,000 subscribers or something.
Oh, what, by the end of the year?
Probably. Let's see here. Kevin Y. Yeah, 100,000 subs. Kevin Wise, continuing with the topic of the gateway, I've seen that they had plans to use Starship as the station. Is that a real option, or is that a rumor with no weight to it? It was a rumor. Now, a lot of people have said and talked about how, and I've even done it, Lunar Starship, when it's retired, when it's no longer safe or whatever, there's kind of 3 options that they're looking at of what they can do. 2 for sure. 1 that's a good idea from the public. 1, they launch Lunar Starship up with its last crew, and they dock it to some sort of module or something, and it turns into a station. That is an option. Option 2, it refuels, goes back down to the lunar surface, and just becomes a permanent base. Option 3, which is a really interesting one from the community, is it lands, and then we actually build, either with other starships or other systems, a way to tip it down and lay Starship down on the ground, and then basically gut it, and be able to find a way of, almost like if they could belly flop it or something, it would work too, but tip it down, and then be able to gut it and turn it into large reusable tanks on the surface. If they could gut all the livable layers, they could rotate the floors to be the correct way for the lunar surface and have like less floors, but a few of them that are quite large, and turn that into a base. So there's a few options on what they could do with Starship in that sense, because Lunar Starship can never come home. The cargo variant of Starship that SpaceX will be launching for NASA is returnable to Earth, as we know right now. And then the version SpaceX will use to send its own crews to the moon is reusable, from what we understand as well. And obviously Mars is going to be reusable as well, because it has to re-enter the Mars atmosphere. But Lunar Starship, no flaps, no heat shield, and that's why it can never come home. So it'll be interesting to see. A lot of people have thought, get 4 of them up there, put a big joint thing in the middle, maybe a cupola on the top, 4 starships, kind of living pattern there. The biggest thing with them is the tanks. Maybe there'd be a way they could launch it up if they had like 2 of them docked and clean a tank and turn it into water or something. Like, the biggest question would be with like 3/4 of Starship, the top part of Starship, when it's fully stacked, is tanks still. So would they really want to be doing so? So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Zach, actually a question for you into the community, because I don't think I have ever heard anybody discuss this, so I'm assuming it's either because it hasn't been thought about too much, or it's a horrible idea, and I just don't know why it's a horrible idea. If we're considering doing a lot more on the moon and building more permanent bases, would it be possible to use the lunar regolith in the same way that we use crushed up rock as like a base for cement? If you're talking about, like, of course you can go down with the Starship and bring any materials that you need, but like we were talking about earlier, weight is money, and all of those things would be primarily built out of metal, even if it's very thin and light, or super, super thick nylon type material. Would it be possible, at least, for like the foundation of something to be built out of like a lunar regolith type concrete material? And then same thing, going back to what we were talking about earlier, for like a launch and landing pad. What if you didn't have to bring one down? What if you just landed very carefully on the lunar surface without one, and then you just built one there out of more lunar surface. We've already got the water for it. Yeah, I don't know if that would be possible, but sounds cool in my head.
There's a lot of that being looked into for Mars, but not really for the moon.
So then I would wonder if it has something to do with an atmosphere being needed.
Maybe. I know, like, for Mars, the issue is the atmosphere isn't enough, so it doesn't offer enough protection. So the theory is what they'll do, either they'll 3D print structures, or they'll find natural caves, and then we can build either inflatable structures inside, or we can build like solid metal or whatever structures we want, or 3D print them out of Martian dirt into kind of a Martian cement under that natural structure. So they want to have at least one layer of kind of the Martian surface on any of our permanent structures right now, because of the protection of like micrometeorites and different things like that. Also, I think it's just good protection for if we get dust storms on Mars, which we know do happen. For the moon, obviously no atmosphere, so no protection. That's why a lot of the pictures of talks about laying Starship down actually then have them covering it over and doing almost like a storm cellar hatch into like the nose cone, and you like descend into your Starship under a kind of a hill. Take a lot of work to do it. These things aren't small, but same idea. It's giving that extra protection to it. If it works on Mars, possibly you could figure something out. It all depends on the components, I guess, in the dirt. Which another honorable mention we forgot about was today. NASA talked about how they opened up a 50-year-old time capsule from the lunar surface, and that they were looking at some new samples there. XLX Bones XLX, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate that. Dumb question. No such thing. We love questions. If you're thinking it, someone else probably is too. Why don't these launch companies send extra materials and use the Rocket Lab's Proton to move them to keep for safekeeping? Wouldn't that help in building a larger space station and manufacturing stations? Like use other... Interesting. That's an interesting concept. So launch payloads of like raw materials and then use Rocket Lab's Proton vehicle to maneuver those materials to positions and then build our own Enterprise building station in orbit. It's in the theory of why that we want to see it happen. I think the biggest thing is payload. We're going to see something like that happen, I think, in our lifetime with Starship. I think in 15, 20 years, we will start seeing plans to build an on-orbit building place. There's a lot of talk about it. A lot of people want to do it, but until Starship can get that type of raw material up, one for weight and one for size, it's pretty difficult to do. But you're spot on there that things like the Proton from Rocket Lab, but also some of their other vehicles, or even just the engines, they'll be able to take that second stage, actually, a Proton. It's an interesting concept, and turn it almost into like a robot that could dock and move things around. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Tweet Peter Beck.
He love it. Yeah, Photon seems like it can actually be really capable going forward. The one, of course, I would absolutely love to see things built in orbit. I wonder what that would do to the speed of production. So like here on Earth, you can have X amount of people working, of course, normal Earth gravity and atmosphere, and you can just kind of go fine. If you watch, and they did a spacewalk yesterday too, so there's a bit of space news that we didn't talk about, but if you watch any of the spacewalks that they do, they move incredibly slowly. And that's when they're like just changing out a battery or a camera or installing something simple. Now imagine you're building a whole space station out of raw materials. That's a pretty large undertaking. So either they're going to have to revolutionize certain types of manufacturing processes, or build the station in a different type of way than what we typically do. Like I know that we had tested on the ISS at one point, like an inflatable module. If that really works out. And actually, I don't remember how well it worked out. I think it was pretty well. If we expand on things like that, then conceivably it would be a lot easier to build large scale things quicker. But if I'm thinking in terms of something similar to our current International Space Station, just building that like around the moon, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. Or you can just build it on the lunar surface itself and then propel it up. But then you're talking about you're gonna need, again, X amount of people on the moon. You can move definitely faster. It's still gonna be slow, unless you've got like a whole thing over it to kind of keep enough oxygen so that you can work as if it's a normal environment. But I don't know. I know NASA is really looking at building things in orbit. So again, I'm sure I'm probably naive in some way, but it seems like there's a lot of challenges with it. But I'd be very interested to see kind of how that goes moving forward.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways it can be done. I think honestly the easiest way would be almost, take the idea of Starship and how big it can be and launch sections built. One stations that would be easier, you could just do long tubes inside and then you have to just launch like the joint connectors. But if we're talking big ships, I don't think, and I want to say I understand how silly it is to say this isn't hard, but I don't think it would be hard to build like a couple floors of like a ship, kind of like they do with literally ships. They'll build sections and then have cranes lift in like 2 or 3 floors of a ship in a little section, and then they weld it together. I think we could see that be done to build larger ships in orbit, where you build basically Lego chunks in an idea of the ship. Maybe we can only do so for how thick the ship will be, so like you have your exterior edges for sure done, and then you just have to do outside welding, and then obviously weld the layers or they click together somehow. But I definitely think there's ways we could see that done with Starship. But we are talking about, as you said, Ian, a whole different way of construction, of engineering. You have to think about, and I was joking about it, but like when you hit with a hammer, you and the hammer are going to go back and the other thing's going to move. So we need jetpacks, strings, something, anchor you down, anchor what you're working on down. We need a lot of new tech, but Starship's going to, I think, equip us to do so. So we'll have to wait to see what happens. Bones, thanks so much for becoming a VIP spectator. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're really knocking us out of the park today, Bones. Morpheer had asked a question earlier saying, sorry, I'm new here, but have you guys given your opinions about the movie Moonfall? No, but I want to watch it, fully recognizing that I'm going to hate it. Not hate it. I'm going to think it's stupid.
It's like 2012 or San Andreas. You want to watch it because it's going to be good but bad.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, this one seems even more Hollywood movie budget. I mean, honestly, the CGI of it, like the production quality, looks phenomenal. But yeah, I didn't buy a ticket in theaters, so I'm gonna wait until it's streaming somewhere, or I'm going to find potentially an unofficial version somewhere, and then I will definitely give my opinions. We can do that during a discussion session on an upcoming podcast for sure. So make sure you ask again, and then maybe I can change my answer.
I see a question saying just move ISS to the lunar orbit. The sad thing with the ISS, and it's heartbreaking, is it's not that we don't want it, it's that it's old and expired is the issue. The cupola is all scratched. The components are already getting to their human expiration date and going to push past it. So ISS is it's just old. So we need some new stations, which is why we have 4 new stations currently in development officially for NASA that NASA will contract and use but will not own, and then some other private stations in development as hotels. So be interesting to see what happens there. Joe thinks the next generation of space stations will be inflatable. I definitely think we'll see a lot more inflatable components. There is the one on the station. If I remember correctly, no one wanted to be the first person to go in it when they attached it to the station, because no one really trusted it, but it's been on station for a few years now, so Haven't heard of any major issues at that point. Real YouTube, good to see you. Will the robots move as slow as humans on the moon to build new things? I think we could see some of these Boston Dynamic dogs and robots really become critical to the future of space construction and even just exploration. Like, why not send those on early missions to Mars to seek out the best landing sites actually on the ground for things? Don't just only trust satellite photography, but also for like rolling out solar panels and different things. If you could find a way to have your cargo, I mean, and honestly, the Boston Dynamic robots probably could move cargo around too if you really wanted to with the right adapters. But, you know, having them move the cargo, get it down on the ground, they could pre-roll out solar panels and pre-roll out inflatable greenhouses. And, you know, so when crews do land, in many ways, they kind of just have to do the final plug into the power, you know, turn the lights and the heat on type of thing. But a lot of the prep work could possibly be done already. I think robots will be seriously a big part. Marcus has a very important question, Ian. Taco Bell or pizza?
Oh, easy. Wait, where is this question coming from? Did I miss it?
Marcus, this is in the chat. And Marcus, first of all, it is 10:30 at night. Why have you not eaten dinner?
Okay, well, Marcus, Taco Bell is the only answer, and Zac, Taco Bell is the only answer. So how do you want to answer this, Zac?
I would say pizza.
Ah, come on, no.
But that's because I had pizza for dinner, so there's more cold pizza upstairs, which I'm very excited about for after the show.
You want to know what's very ironic? I told you I was having my dinner after the show. It was gonna be pizza, but my answer is still Taco Bell.
Interesting.
Bones and ass doesn't metal well together if there isn't any oxidation in space. It can. Specific types of metals, specific circumstances, and it's not something, as far as I know, you should ever rely on. So I don't think we would ever use that as a method of getting things done. It seems like it would cause way more problems than we would ever be able to solve with it. And scrolling down, that was already kind of answered too. So, okay, well, at least I know I'm not wrong.
Kevin, after the ISS retired, is there plans to have the station specifically for staging ships to launch tomorrow? Is there plans to have a station specifically for staging ships to launch to Mars and other destinations in the galaxy? I love that these are things that we're talking about that are happening. Like, it's just cool that we're talking about going to Mars and it's not like a hypothetical. Sort of. Not officially, but sort of. So Gateway is all specifically for the moon. All the stations currently in design are for research and development and business opportunities in low Earth orbit. We'll have to wait and see how long it takes for Starbucks or McDonald's to get their first location. But there is not a like terminal or a station that you get to and then you go from there yet. A lot of people think that's what the moon will become, but I think that we might be at like 100 years from. I think that's going to take a lot of development of the maybe 75. That's a lot of development.
No, it totally is, but NASA seems to be really excited about Lunar Gateway. And not a short term, but not a that long term goal. Now, I definitely agree it's going to take a long time, but I totally see by like 2040, 2050, maybe.
From the lunar surface or from Gateway?
From Gateway.
Okay. I'm like talking surface.
Okay.
The Gateway, I guess you could use. It would take less to burn out from lunar orbit.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking is if you just dock at Gateway, then you can just go right off to Mars without having to escape the gravity of the moon as much. But I don't
theoretically, I'm thinking like Starbase Moon. Going from there straight to Mars, like launching out. You got your terminal, the local public. I can't remember what show it is. There's a movie that has something like it. That I think is like 100 years, where we actually have like big foundation on the moon that we're launching deep space and stuff. Using Gateway, yeah, that could make sense as like just a hub refueling. You're not fighting the Earth orbit as much. Yeah, probably. I probably would see a new station for that. A Gateway seems like it's gonna stay pretty small and almost more just a transfer unit than like a permanently inhabited, because it's not gonna be. It's gonna be empty most of its life, from what it sounds like. Because it sounds like they want to have most of their people in low Earth orbit. Honestly, just because it's easier to get them there. Lunar orbit, takes a lot more work. So we'll have to wait and see. It's a good question.
Fair enough. Oh man, I'm scrolling to all the food. You guys are making me hungry. I said I haven't had dinner yet. It's gonna be after the show. Um,
How would you refuel the fueling station? With refueling ships. Why you don't just use the refueling ships to refuel the ship, I don't know. Don't know if it's just the lighting, but love the purple. I was trying it out. No, it's the lights. The purple hair. Should I keep... Instead of frosted tips, we were going for purple... I don't know. Purple hearts in the chat. Oh my goodness. In Star Wars, they made the moon. Just saying. True.
in terms of sci-fi accuracy, how does Call of Duty Infinite Warfare stack to reality? Honestly, I have not really played the game. I've seen so essentially, if I have my Call of Duty franchise history accurate, which is not a guarantee, I think this is the one where they fight in space and there's this guy that has like some form of cybernetic suit that can let him like jump really far, use some rockets or something like that. I have no idea, again, without being able to accurately say from experience playing the game. I used to play Call of Duty on the Wii, believe it or not. And then I was cool enough to finally get an Xbox 360, and that was the last console I ever had, so now everything is PC. And they never have any Steam sales for Call of Duty that are reasonable, so I'll never get it.
Calling them out right here on the launch pad. But I think with that, we've come to the end of the space news questions. We'll continue the conversation over on Discord. You guys are more than welcome to join us. It's totally free to do so. I know I'm going to jump over to live comms. Ian might jump in for a little bit, but he needs to eat too. As before we wrap up, we wanted to give a shout out again. Go head on over etsy.com/shop/the-launchpad-shop. Or click the link that will be in the chat there. Check it out. We've got a bunch of new collections that we just released. We released our SLS collection. We do have our special edition rollout t-shirt available in a men's and a women's cut, as well as our SLS schematic. As we mentioned earlier, our brand new Crew Dragon collection is there. And we do have our stuff ready for Crew 4 and our good old America Broomstick t-shirt, which is still a fundraiser for helping support Ukraine. $10 from every shirt we are donating to help get aid to that. So great way to check that out, help us out, help Ukraine out, and get some shirts that start the conversation with your friends. I've talked to a number of people that have worn some of them, and they're like, what is that? Especially the schematics. People are looking at it and like, what is it? And it's a great way to start a conversation with your friends or family about what you know about space, and then you direct them here for questions that you don't know how to answer. But as we wrap up for the evening, Ian, favorite space story or thing of the week that we went over?
That we went over, I would have to
or say... didn't include.
Okay, so didn't include. This is gonna be... So I read on Twitter earlier today. Now, this isn't new news. This is many, many decades ago, and I don't remember which even lunar flight it was, but one of them, I don't know, one of the Saturn V to the moon missions, somebody had snuck on board inside of their spacesuit a Reuben sandwich, corned beef sandwich. I think it was
It
corned beef
was
sandwich.
I believe it was a corned beef sandwich.
Yeah, yeah, and he pulled it out and was like, "You guys want some?" And they're like, "Where'd that come from?" And then it started to fall apart, and he was like, "Maybe this was a bad idea," and they just stuck it back in his suit and they gave up on it. But thought that was kind of a fun little lighthearted story. But for today, um, I would have to say it was probably the news of the Vulcan Centaur and the rocket engines. Uh, don't talk about it that much other than when it gets brought up, but genuinely, I am so very excited for this thing to launch because we cover a lot of space news here, and we're now going to more and more launches. But to be able to say that I have like something that I held, that I created, that was put onto there, and I can like watch it actually go up would be pretty cool. Oh, look at you, Zach. You're incredible. Wow. Oh, Zach, you're muted. Zach, you're muted.
We were so close.
We
We were
were.
so close. Ah. John Young and his team, it was handed to him by a colleague. They shoved it in his pocket. He launched, pulled it out, took a bite, and and then offered a bite to his partner. And crumbs were getting all over the place, so they had to shove it back in the pocket. And I don't know they ever pulled it out again. But there's actually a corned beef sandwich at one of the space museums in gelatin hard whatever silicone clear that looks like the sandwich that they got. Now they do go through a check before they board spaceships to make sure people aren't sneaking things like that on board. It was corned beef, and it looks like it was probably on a rye bread.
Good sandwich.
But Marcus is yelling bingo on a 0x0 bingo sheet. Next week, we are going to try to roll out TLP bingo, so you make sure you stay tuned for that. That's going to have some of the things that we say to respond to during the launch pod. You guys will be able to play along live, and the first person to get bingo and send it in on Discord will get some sort of maybe a prize, a store discount, different things like that. So it'll be great. Marcus, good point. They didn't stop the gorilla suit for the Kellys, but that's because that was just incredible and it needs to be done again. But yeah, quite a busy couple of weeks in everything space. As always, thank you guys so much for joining us here on the launch pad for episode 007 of the launch pod. Here at the launch pad, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow. It's been a couple weeks tomorrow because explorers of tomorrow because we believe that space is better together. We're going to head on over to the Discord. You're welcome to join us there. Join us later in the week for our live launch coverage, and stay tuned for any breaking news, space updates, or teleconferences from NASA as we count down to the launch of Artemis 1 later this summer. But for now, from the TLP studio, this is Zac and Ian signing off. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for coming.
Bye-bye now.
It was nice seeing you all.
Can't wait for next week.
Love to see you come and love to see you go.
Bye-bye now.